Hello and welcome to That's Football. How are you all doing this Saturday evening? Most of the Premier League big clubs have played today, and Manchester United obviously at 12:30 today beat Spurs in what was a fascinating game for anybody who watched it. Really, some people are saying it was a bad game, some people are saying it was a good game. Personally, I thought it was a very intriguing game of chess which was very full-blooded. Not a lot of quality there, but ultimately Manchester United riding out winners. And then Manchester City predictably in the afternoon beating West Brom 3-2, which was a bit closer than it should have been. City could have won that 4 or 5-1 again. They maintain that 5-point gap over Manchester United. Obviously Spurs, it's an 8-point gap now for them, and they've got Chelsea, Arsenal and Liverpool closing in on Spurs. I think the interesting thing and the big question is, what do you all think? Can Manchester United or Spurs, or any other club for that matter, catch Manchester City? To be saying that on the 28th of October seems very, very silly, but Manchester City are racking up the points, they're racking up the goals, and I also think that there's, well, we'll come to that in a minute, but of course Manchester United could catch them. It's 5 points, but Manchester United play Chelsea next week. Chelsea winning away to Bournemouth very well. They beat Watford last week. They've taken 6 points, which have been tight 6 points. That are, you know, their form probably, they should be very happy with that 6 points. Hazard coming back into form now, and again next week's another week for Manchester City where they'll be thinking, hold up, if Chelsea do us a favour against United, we can go into that international break and we could be, you know, 8 points clear at the top, which is significant. So as I've said, I think the Manchester City bubble will burst. They're doing very, very well at the moment. Everything's going their way. I'm a bit confused. I don't know what you lot think, but I'm a bit confused as to why teams are struggling with Manchester City so much. They've got a slightly better clientele, and some of their players from last year are playing better than they did last year. But ultimately, Pep Guardiola's not reinvented the wheel. He's still playing the same way as he did last season. Slightly better players, like I say, but I can't understand how he did make some change in the week in the Carabao Cup with against Wolves, but the tactics were still the same, and Wolves dealt with it. I just think, to be honest with you, I think Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool, Spurs, Arsenal, and obviously City apart, the Premier League's pretty poor this season, and I think what Manchester City are benefiting from is the fact that they're just, you know, they're playing well, and their system is just trouncing poor teams in the Premier League. Whereas teams like United and Spurs, for different reasons, they've dropped points this season, and City have had a bit of luck that have put them in a good position. I saw City against Chelsea, and Morata went off, and it was a tight game that they won 1-0. I saw City against Liverpool at the Etihad, and Sane gets sent off. Very equal game. You could say Liverpool was on top. Sane gets sent off, and obviously it's very easy for City then against 10 men to implement their game against them. So I do think the bubble will burst for City, but I think for the good of the Premier League, somebody needs to go with them. You almost need United to beat Chelsea next week just to keep it 5 points, because I think City's bubble will burst, but if it bursts when they're like 10, 8 points ahead, is that really going to be significant to them? Somebody needs to put some pressure onto City. And the reality is Manchester United don't play Man City until December. Spurs don't play Manchester City till December, which is 5 or 6 Premier League games away. And like I say, if Spurs or United do trip up again, they could be double points clear by the time they get those real tests. Because watching Spurs United today, I think both those teams have got managers and players that can beat City. City will not be able to do what they've done to, you know, the likes of West Brom and Watford and everybody else. They won't be able to do that to Spurs and United, because United have got better managers, better players, and tactically they won't be so naive. But it's the gap that City have got when that happens. Arsenal beat Swansea 2-1. And Liverpool beating Huddersfield 3-0. I don't think any of those two teams are going to cause anybody any problems. But in relation to Manchester City, we know that Chelsea and Manchester United play each other next week. But Manchester City play Arsenal next week, and I think that is quite an interesting game. It's not the sort of game you think City are going to drop points. I think City will be able to beat Arsenal quite comfortably, because Arsenal defensively aren't that great. Then they come back from the international break, they play Leicester away, I think they'll win that. They play Huddersfield away, they'll win that. They've got Southampton at home, they'll win that. And the fixtures for City at the moment are all winnable, but when you look at what the likes of Manchester United have got, and I can tell you right now that Manchester United's next few fixtures in the league, obviously they've got Chelsea away, then they've got, let me come to November, they've got Chelsea away, then they come back from the international break, Newcastle at home, you'd expect them to win that. Brighton at home, you'd expect them to win that. Watford away, could be quite tough. and then they've got Arsenal away, and then Manchester City. So if it's tough for United to sort of keep pace with City, but they're going to have to. They're going to have to win next week, and then maybe they get some big players back, and their form starts to, they've just got to stay. I think Manchester United have got to try and stay within 2 results of Manchester City for that game in December, and then they can exert some pressure on them. With regards to Spurs, I don't think Spurs are out of it. They've got Crystal Palace next week. I'd expect them to win that. Then they come back from the international break and they go to Arsenal, which will be tough. Then they've got West Brom at home, Leicester away, Watford away, and then Stoke at home, and then Man City away. So it's not over. I just think for the good of the Premier League, we could do with Manchester City dropping some points. Arsenal will not be easy, says Duranyan. City will crumble, they always do, says Dazees Gaming. Look, I think City will crumble if someone puts some pressure on them. If they are allowed to get double figures ahead before Christmas, then it doesn't matter if you crumble. Confidence is huge, you've got a big gap. Teams have got to stay close to them, and whether it was Spurs who won today or United, and thankfully it was United as a United fan, I hope now that United can beat Chelsea next week and they can have a good November and they can stay within a couple of results of City, and then they can play them in December, hopefully beat them, and then you've got a Premier League title race on. And you know what? Spurs could win the load of their games, and they could beat City the following week, and then suddenly they're in it as well. And I hope that happens, because nobody wants it to happen apart from the City fans. Nobody wants City to be running away with this title by Christmas time. This isn't La Liga, and we don't want that, and we don't want that. So I hope they do drop points. But I do think it comes down to the fact that realistically, we've had a good Premier League, and I know Huddersfield beat United last week, but I think that was a lot to do with a certain centre-back coming on who was very, very poor, and United had an off day. I don't see many teams this season causing the big teams problems. I think Watford have done quite well, but I don't think the standard below the top 5 is that good, and I think the top 5 are very good, and I think they are getting the results. So be interesting to see, very, very interesting to see. You just can't admit when another team is better than United, says the British Womble. I don't understand what point you're trying to make there. Manchester United won today, and we haven't played Manchester City, so that's not what we've said. And what we've actually said is I hope City will drop some points because we want to have a Premier League race. I'm not talking about Manchester United. I think Manchester United had a very, very good result today, and Mourinho should get the plaudits instead of being slagged off by the press, because Pochettino's a good manager. Spurs have got such a good team, such a good team. Harry Kane was out today. They've still got players to come back. Their bench was very good. They're a very good side, Spurs, and Manchester United beat them today, and they deserve the plaudits for that. So there we go. I'm very unhappy. I'm very happy with United today, says Ewan Gordon. I think United fans will be very happy. It was a very tense game, and I think two good teams went against each other. And it was a full-blooded game, like I said, and Manchester United came out on top. And maybe that home advantage, if it had been the other way round, it might have been Spurs who nicked it 1-0, United feeling hard done by. But it was a good game. It was a good game, and I don't think there can be any moaning about what went off. No United stand tonight, the big man, says Mad Mark. We've had problems with the fan cams tonight with the United stand. I was going to do a Skype show on the United stand tonight at 8 o'clock for those people who watch the United stand. Hence, I've done it on That's Football to do a quick sort of Premier League review. The fan cams are going to be going up in the next hour. Loads of problems with them, but we've got some good fan cams, so they're going to go up in the next hour on the United stand. Hence, I've not done a show on there because there's no point in cross-pollinating the footage. But yeah, I think we need... Perisic would have been a brilliant signing, talking about United there. Chelsea United next week, absolutely massive. Obviously, Manchester City Arsenal. I can only see Manchester City destructing Arsenal, just like Liverpool did the other week. I can't see any other result. I don't think Arsenal are capable of going and causing City a problem at all. But if they could cause them to drop points, I think that would be good for the Premier League. It's an interesting battle down the bottom, and again I think it's an interesting battle down the bottom because there's a lot of poor sides in the Premier League this year. Some people may think that's wrong, but I really do think that. So can Manchester United catch Manchester City? They can do, but I think Manchester United need to beat Chelsea next week, and they don't normally get a good result at Chelsea, and City need to drop unexpected points before December. And then I think we've got a bit of a title race on the cards. But Pep's getting it very, very easy at the moment. And, you know, he doesn't deserve any criticism. They are beating the teams in front of them and they look very, very strong. But I still think City are weak at the back. And I still think teams have just got to be patient against Man City. Don't take your game to them. Don't take your game to them. Keep compact, have somebody strong and quick up front. And, you know, Wolves did very well against them in the week. But at the moment, it's City's to lose because they're the front runners and they look very strong and they're scoring a lot of goals. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll speak to you all very soon. And, yeah. Thanks for joining us. Drop a like, subscribe to That's Football if you're new, the generic football channel for everybody to get involved with. Get commenting below, and I'll see you all soon.